Today you're going to meet Dr. Larry Nelson. Let's go to his LinkedIn profile where it says he graduated from Brigham Young University in 1994 with a bachelor's degree in family science. He then went on to get a master's degree from BYU and graduate in 1996. And then he went on to the University of Maryland where he earned a PhD in human development. He is currently a member of the faculty at BYU and teaches in the School of Family Life. And he was recently a guest on the Follow Him podcast. Let's hear a portion of what he had to say on that podcast and talk about it.
Anger is so destructive.
We just got started, but Larry, I'm going to have to stop you right there. Anger in and of itself, not destructive. Sometimes what people do with it can be. I can feel anger in my body and I can actually use it to propel me to do something good. I don't have to use anger to destroy myself or others.
This is a silly example, but I remember family members playing a game one time and somebody did something in the context of the game to set one person in our group back, and she spent the rest of the game trying to get revenge on that. So angry and trying to hurt the other person. And afterwards admitted, yeah, it didn't make me feel better. It just ruined the game and actually hurt a relationship that night.
While I do agree that his illustration is silly, I really wish what he'd done was also give an example of someone who was playing the game that night, likely got angry over something, and then didn't use the anger to hurt anyone. Because guess what? That happens all the time.
Anger isn't classified clinically as an addiction, but it has many of the same properties as other behavioral or substance addictions.
Why do Mormons want to do this so badly? To make things into an addiction? Having normal, developmentally appropriate sexual feelings outside of marriage, outside of heterosexual marriage in Mormonism, is often called an addiction in one way or another. And now Larry is trying to say that anger is an addiction. Please, Mormons, stop. Not everything is an addiction. And taking normal emotions and normal developmentally appropriate feelings and reactions and calling them addictions is actually incredibly damaging.
Similar to those addictions, anger can feel good. It can activate the same reward center of the brain as certain substances so that we want it more. People, if we allow ourselves to become very, very angry because of things done to us, we'll start looking for more reasons to get angry.
I'm going to argue with him that people might look for and find more reasons to be angry. But I am again going to disagree that this is the only thing that anger can do in our bodies. Anger can actually be a gift. It's a warning sign that something isn't right. And when I started listening to that warning and heeding that signal that I was angry because something bad was happening, I started to get out of relationships, including the relationship I had with the church, that were harming me.
Look for perceived slights.
Or, Larry, or you might just be seeing slights that are actually there and acknowledging them for what they are.
Interpret things in ways that were never intended to be mean.
This can be a difficult one because if I do something to someone and I didn't have the intention of being mean, but they felt like I was being mean, there has to be some acknowledgement there that whether or not I intended to do something that hurt someone else, I did hurt someone else.
But also that we'll feel justified in feeling angry. Yes, but they.
Again, Larry, there are valid reasons to feel anger. That's why we have the emotion. What I do with my anger is different. It's different than feeling the anger. I can feel the anger and once again can use it to do something good or powerful or advocatory. Just because I feel the anger does not make me a bad person.
When this happens, when we're angry, it forces others to distance themselves from us.
This is a harmful thing to say. When my children are angry, I don't distance myself from them. I lean in. And I help them lean in, and we get curious about why they're feeling that way. And then we can brainstorm together things to do about it. If every time one of my children got angry, I pulled away, they would learn to be afraid of their anger, just the way I did when I was a kid. I learned within Mormonism and my family system of Mormonism that anger was of the devil. I think it's really important that that notion stops being perpetuated.
Which we may then see as another reason to be angry without accepting any responsibility for the role that our own anger or our behavior may be playing in the situation. Anger can affect our jobs, our marriages, our relationships with other family members, friends, and neighbors.
Anger absolutely can and will will affect all of those things, and we get to decide when we're feeling anger how it affects them. I don't mean to say this for the 1,000th time now, Larry, but anger is a feeling. It's not an action. It's our actions that affect those things, not our feelings.
It affects our spiritual progress as we often direct our anger towards church leaders and our ward members.
You know what, Larry? My church leaders hid billions of dollars from me while telling me to pay 10% of my income instead of feeding my kids. It was good for me to be angry about that because they were harming me. What did I do with that anger? I studied and I learned and I left the church. My anger helped to protect me and my children.
Becoming angry and seeking vengeance is not about what others did to us. Yes, but it's about our spiritual development.
It's actually okay to acknowledge that someone else hurt you. It is.
Elder Renlund, one of my all-time favorite talks, Infuriating Unfairness, teaches this when he said, when faced with unfairness, we can push ourselves away from God or we can be drawn toward him for help and support.
Church leaders absolutely love to make things binary. There are so many choices, and those two are not the only two. One of the first things I do when faced with unfairness is remind myself that life just isn't fair. It just isn't. I actually say it to my kids all the time because children do love to say, it's not fair. And I say, we don't do fair in this house because life isn't fair, because we're all different. Do I want things to be equitable? Yes, I do. And I will advocate and fight for that. Do I want there to be inclusion? Absolutely. Do I also understand that things aren't fair? Yeah.
For example, the prolonged warfare between the Nephites and the Lamanites affected people differently. Mormon observed that many had become hardened, while others were softened because of their afflictions, insomuch that they did humble themselves before God.
It is good to learn things from fictional narratives, so we can learn something from this, even though it's a fictional narrative. Do remember, though, that the Lamanites and the Nephites have not been proven to ever have existed.
Do not let unfairness harden you or corrode your faith in God.
Do not let people's pushiness or their credentials tell you that feeling anger is bad and that you have to believe in God to be a good person. I'll finish with this quote, Dr. Larry Nelson. It's from the CPTSD Foundation on Facebook. CPTSD stands for Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. The quote says, anger is the part of yourself that loves you the most. It knows when you are being mistreated, neglected, disrespected. It signals that you have to take a step out of a place that doesn't do you justice. It makes you aware that you need to leave a room, a job, a relationship, old patterns that don't work for you anymore. Learn to listen to your anger and make it your best friend. Then it'll leave. Do you have thoughts on the emotion of anger? If so, go ahead and feel free to put them in the comments.